everybody, I'm Ashley, and I'm glad that you're here for the second week of our series on temptation called Playbook. Okay, so remember, temptation invites you to do something that may not be best for you, and how you respond matters. Listen, we've all been there, right? And that's why we need a game plan for navigating temptation. Of course, the idea of wanting something can be tricky, because sometimes we want to do things that may not be that bad, like watch a little Netflix before bed, or eat the candy we stashed, or pull an all-nighter playing video games with our friends. But other times, we experience the temptation to do something that can lead us to some pretty big choices, and that comes with some pretty big consequences. You, me, your leaders, we've all experienced temptation. Now, maybe you aren't tempted to do the same thing as someone else, but you know that feeling that comes with giving in to temptation and facing the consequences. Because listen, we all know what that feels like. As humans, this temptation thing is a lifelong deal. Maybe this will help better explain.
Now I'm set. You can eat these in but wait 1 second, okay?
Okay.
I gotta go upstairs. Don't eat it until I come back, okay?
Okay.
All right, I'll be right back. Don't eat it, okay?
Okay.
Are you eating it? Don't eat it.
Okay, we can be like that kid who couldn't resist the treats in front of them. And we usually end up feeling a certain way about the decision that we made. Listen, I don't know about you, but when I give into temptation, one of the first things I think is this: why did I do that? Am I supposed to know better? I mean, I know how to avoid other things that aren't good for me. I know that breaking a bone wouldn't be good for me, so I wear pads and protective gear for my sport. I know that cavities aren't good for me, so I try to keep my teeth clean. I know vegetables are good for me, so I eat them when I can. By the way, does ketchup count? If I can choose what's good for me, it makes me wonder, why can't I do the same when it comes to the things I'm tempted by? And I bet you've asked a similar question. Maybe when you've given into temptations, you've wondered, am I bad because I wanted to do it? Am I bad because I've already done it? Why can't I choose the right thing? Am I the only one that feels this way? If I never stop struggling with temptation, does that mean that something's wrong with me? Listen, I think that one of the most confusing things when it comes to temptation isn't about whether or not we give in. It's not always about the choices that we do or don't make. Sometimes the hardest thing about dealing with temptation is the way it makes us feel about ourselves. Are we bad? Are we wrong? Are we the only ones that struggle like this? So when questions about temptation pop up in our minds like these, one of the first things that we can do is look to Jesus, because Jesus dealt with temptation. Yes, the one who is God in a human body. Just knowing that makes me feel better already. So 3 of the people who wrote the story of Jesus' life, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, mention that before Jesus started traveling, healing, and teaching, the Spirit led him into the desert. In the story of what happened, we discover that during his time in the desert, Jesus experienced very real temptation. We also discovered that the way Jesus resisted temptation was with his playbook. Each time Jesus was tempted, he resisted temptation by quoting a scripture in such a way that showed that he knew and trusted God's heart. So the writer of Hebrews, in a letter in the New Testament, wrote something so powerful for us to consider regarding Jesus and temptation. At the time this letter was written, there was a lot of temptation for people to turn away from Jesus and enjoy what looked like an easier life. Following Jesus back then was extremely difficult, and it's possible people might have been second-guessing their decision to follow Jesus. So in an effort to help people out, the author of Hebrews wrote them a letter. Did the letter say that these were bad people because they faced temptation? Did it say that they weren't being faithful followers of Jesus? Did it say they were wrong? Did it say they were the only ones struggling like this? Well, let's find out. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet he did not sin. Okay, let's begin at the end of this verse. The writer said that we have one, being Jesus, who has been tempted in every way. In every way. So if Jesus was tempted in every way, I think it's safe to assume that we will be tempted in every way too. So we need to make a plan for how we will resist temptation. But let's break this down even more. The phrase high priest was used to describe Jesus here. The role of the high priest in Jewish culture was to act as the middle person between God and God's followers. But when Jesus died and came back to life, he became the ultimate high priest, proving that he was God in a human body and removing anything that would keep us from God. So when the writer said that we have a high priest who empathizes or understands our weaknesses and temptations, the author was talking about Jesus. And that's our secret to resisting temptation. It's one thing to be tempted. It's another thing to have a playbook to resist temptation. And it's an even better thing to have Jesus, our high priest, who has run every play in the playbook and can and will coach us to resist temptation. So does being tempted and not knowing what to do mean somehow you've messed up? Does not having all the answers on your own mean that you're just not getting life right? Not at all. It means that you're human. It's the opposite. It means that you need a playbook. In fact, everybody needs a playbook for temptation. You, me, your teachers, your family members, your best friend, even Jesus himself. Everybody faces temptation. And because of that, we can know that we're not failing or wrong or facing temptation all on our own, because everybody needs a playbook for temptation. Jesus was tempted, and in every temptation, Jesus never gave in. In the story of Jesus facing temptations, we see that he used specific scriptures to remind himself of what is true and to help him resist temptation. He leaned on the playbook of what he knew was best, and he made decisions that lined up with that. So facing temptation isn't wrong. It's not the desire to do something that's wrong. It's what you choose to do with that desire that can lead you down a path that is not best for you. And that's where the playbook comes in. Without it, you're facing temptation totally on your own. But with a good playbook to resist it, you're prepared to make a different choice, a better choice than giving in. So remember, everybody needs a playbook for temptation. Even the best teams in any sport know that this is true. The playbook isn't created for one player. It's created for the entire team because every single person needs it in order to play the game well. The same is true for temptation. We all face it, and we all need help resisting it. Because of that, we don't have to be left feeling awful or confused or even ashamed when we face it. Instead, we can look at our playbook for resisting temptation to find a better way to see both ourselves and the temptations that we face. In fact, here are a few things that we can do to start. First, remember what's true about you. Unwise choices don't make us bad people. One mistake doesn't mean you've messed up for good. The desire to do something that we know we shouldn't doesn't make us anything other than human. So when we find ourselves facing temptation, we need to remember what's true. We are God's good creation. We are loved, known, and understood by Jesus himself. And there's nothing that we can do that will change that. And second, look to Jesus. Remember, Jesus understands what we're feeling when we're tempted. He gets it. And because of that, he can help us as we face it. Not only can we look to his real life recorded in scripture to see how he handled temptation, we can ask God for help as we handle it ourselves. So the next time you're tempted to do something you know isn't good for you, ask for Jesus' help. Pray to be reminded that he not only loves you, but he also understands what you're feeling, and he's there to guide you toward a better path. And finally, invite other people to be a part of your playbook. Since everybody faces temptation, that means that there are friends, trusted adults, and other people in your life who know what you're going through too. You do not have to do it alone. Part of your playbook can be inviting a trusted friend or an adult like a parent, guardian, a small group leader into what you're dealing with. Ask them to encourage, support, and walk with you as you work to choose God's best for your life. This is actually why we have small groups. Your leaders and your friends in your group can be so helpful in navigating this stuff with you. And I hope that you will talk to them about your game plan for temptation. Since everybody needs a playbook for temptation, why not face it together? So when you head to your group, I want you to think about this question. Who is one person you can invite into your game plan for temptation?